and welcome to another episode of HR Nightmares. This is the podcast and YouTube channel that addresses real HR problems out there in the workplace with a little bit of humor, but really pragmatic advice. We always have great co-hosts and awesome guests. Today, I feel extra lucky to have my guy, Graham Elmore, Director of People and Culture from Vantaca, on as my guest co-host. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks, Lisa. I always appreciate having the opportunity to be up here with you. My background a little bit, as she said, I'm the Director of People and Culture at Vantaca currently, but before that, started my career in education, teacher, coach. Last stop was an elementary school principal, and then thanks to COVID, figured I needed to make a pivot to support my family a little bit better. So I've been a part of Team Vantaca for a little over 2 years, and been working directly with Lisa here for about a year now. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, and he's an excellent person to have as the center of a dance floor. He's my teach me how to Dougie, teach me how to Dougie guy. So, okay, the special guest that we have today is one of several DEI experts that we've had on the HR Nightmares podcast. I feel like this is a space that we can never, be talking, discussing, exploring different things in this space with experts. And so I'm pleased to meet Carolyn King and also have her on the podcast. Thank you. Will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Caroline King. I own Bright Star Diversity. I'm fairly new to Wilmington, 4 to 5 years. I'm just getting to know the lay of the land, especially because I moved here and then COVID hit, so I didn't get out to get to do much networking. So I'm getting out, getting to meet people like you guys, which is great. I have about 17 years experience in business strategy and clinical research on the corporate side of things. And then I started this business about maybe 4 years ago, and I was still working my corporate job and doing this as well. And so recently I have fully committed to doing Bright Star Diversity, 100%, left my corporate job, and this is what I'm completely committed to doing, working with businesses, universities, and schools to help them understand the way diversity fits into their operational excellence, looking at it from that lens. Mm-hmm. How everything fits together, and diversity is a really big part of that.
Yeah. Congratulations on starting your business. It's a huge decision to walk away from a very successful corporate career that's stable and it's not easy, but
No.
after 17 years of being in the corporate world and clinical research, there's just endless opportunities to continue to grow in that space and to take a risk and start your own business. Congratulations,
Thank
and I wish
you.
you all the success. I do think I'm most interested in kind of understanding when you had started the business on a part-time basis, when you were working in the corporate world in strategy positions, what was that one kind of key initiative or program that made you kind of get bit by the bug and start exploring what would it be to be a consultant?
I would say it's the lack of what I was experiencing that bit me.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So I was seeing a lot of kind of companies checking the boxes. I've worked at a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And I worked in the healthcare space for a long time. I started in healthcare disparities, and then kind of, as I got promoted, kind of ended up in a position that's not where I started. I had a passion for helping people, minority groups, vulnerable populations, and I just got to a place where I wasn't doing what my mission was. Mm-hmm. And then I started just noticing that as I moved up, it was a real struggle to move up in the company, and I'm looking around and seeing others that look like me, that's not just African American, but women too, and other minorities having trouble moving up the corporate ladder. Mm-hmm. And also maybe being treated in different ways, not as well as other employees, not getting the opportunities, not getting the support, kind of the buy-in from leadership. So they could develop themselves. And that's really what bit me, is my observations of this.
What does checking the box look like? So again, we try to help people avoid HR nightmares, and certainly, I know a lot of the fear or hesitancy to sort of go, dive into diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, or get somebody like you to come in and be like, hey, help me structure a strategy, help me put good policies together, is just well, I don't want to do it wrong. I don't want somebody to go on HR Nightmares and talk about my company and how I just check the box and I just don't want to do it wrong. And so how do we avoid what does checking the boxes look like? How do we avoid kind of doing lip service to the initiative, but also just like trying to start somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, to me, checking the box is kind of, just putting together those modules and pushing them out there and requiring people to take them with
Like
no,
a training, like an
Yes.
online training or
yeah,
something?
with no real follow-up, no
Yeah.
real person-to-person interaction. I know I learn best by having conversations with other people, learning from them, but when I'm just watching a module and, then it goes, check it, then I can move on to the next thing. Every year we had to take, diversity training, security training, whatever it is. But we don't really learn anything new. It's the same training every year. And the training's not evolving with society. So I call that, checking the box, really not investing in what's happening and keeping current with the trends and checking in with your employees even, like doing assessments and surveys to make sure they're getting what they need. Because I think there's often times that if you were to pool your employees, that they would say, well, I didn't really learn that much from that training. I'm still feeling ignored.
What kind of questions could we ask without being like too invasive? Here's two white people asking people about like what questions should we ask without like overstepping our boundaries or like going out like too far over our skis?
Well, I think that's like the biggest barrier is that fear of offending people.
Yeah,
people have
totally.
like the best intentions, right? I mean, sometimes people don't, but most of the time the people I meet have wonderful intentions, but they're scared of offending people. And I think that maybe we should not be so scared of offending people and really have conversations. So before you would put a survey out, bring together a team of people from your company, from all levels of your company, from all backgrounds, and, bounce around some questions, ask them, kind of like a focus group.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them what questions are appropriate, what they would want to be asked. So
That makes sense. So I'm thinking about like a focus group at Vantaca, and not hand selecting people because you're making assumptions
No.
and going off of what you've heard about people, and maybe you just say, hey, we're setting up this focus group and anyone and everyone we'd like to have participate.
Yeah, don't
so
cap it. Just
you don't cap
come
it.
on.
You don't.
and that really is equity, right?
Right.
So that speaks to equity. It's
Right.
like you want to give everybody the opportunity to have their input in this. And so, and also that gives buy-in too. It's like my company really cares. They want to know what I feel, and they really want to ask those tough questions. And, that also covers you because it's like, yes, I consulted my employees before I asked these questions. So then you can kind of figure out where that line is. I just really think people should not be afraid to ask questions of people in the company, as long as it's done in a respectful way.
Right.
And, and that's why outside consultants can be very helpful because they have that, objective view. When you're in your company, you're in it. You're in the atmosphere. You have all that, politics and all the other stuff going around. But having somebody from the outside come in and kind of help facilitate can be helpful.
Yeah. We are living in a cancel culture. So if I put myself out there and I'm trying to be authentic and I'm talking, in plain language and I'm not perfecting every word that's coming out of my mouth, but my intent is good and true and like coming from a good place, it is hard to put yourself out on a limb, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then the spotlight is on you and like, so how do you back up if you make a mistake? Or we had Joe Conway on here one time and he said the same thing. He's like, just try. And if you make a mistake, then you make a mistake. We're all human, but like, just try.
Yeah,
Can you expand
yes.
on that?
And I
Like,
can
how do you feel about that?
totally understand what you're saying because it's like you could say one thing and then someone puts it out there on Twitter and then before you know it, it's this huge
Right.
huge
And
deal,
and you
did
didn't
not
mean it that way.
You didn't even mean it that way. That was
Right.
not your intention behind the words.
Yeah.
So I do think yes, you do need to be careful what you say, but that is part of why you need to hire a diverse staff.
Yeah.
Because that is somewhat your protection, because they're bringing back their backgrounds, their opinions to help you kind of learn how to speak the language of your employees. I mean, that's the best advice I can give is really have a diverse, strong staff. And that's why it's important levels of leadership to have diversity because they're passing down that messaging. And you want to have that, holistic, like the whole picture. You don't want to just coming from, a certain demographic. And in this town, a lot of the companies are owned by people that are white. And so, they're getting that one perspective. So they have to really be careful to diversify their board, diversify their management, people leaders. And I think that will give you some insight into what you can and can't say to people.
What does this have you thinking about?
I just think about, and we talk about a lot, just intent versus impact, right? And so while the intent was pure, the impact was something different. And to your point, having the right people at the table to have the right conversations is important. And thinking of that, like you said, you had a lot of opportunities to see what wasn't happening. What would you say to HR teams or companies that are just starting that maybe don't have any initiatives? Where would you even start to get the party started?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the ideal clients, honestly. People that don't have any of that historical.
You don't have to fix it.
Right. I mean, the historical policies are really what get in people's way. So if you're starting with a clean slate, that's great because you can start where society is today. You don't have to worry about fixing stuff from the past, that maybe your company did or put out there or whatnot, because people can dig up whatever now. So, I mean, I would always say, the way I work is I have a consultation with people. It's a free consultation because I want to know if we can work together. Are we on the same page? Because not everybody is on the same page. Not everybody has their own reasons for wanting to work or wanting to integrate DEI into their organization. And so I want to make sure we're on the same page and we're both doing it for the same reasons. But after we talk and we consult, we define goals, we try to do gap analysis, we do assessments. If they allow us to survey their employees, that's really critical to figure out where your employees are. You can look at who do you have working for you now? What level, who do you have in your leadership now? And having those conversations is really where it starts. It's like you really want to be able to define your goal, measure your goal, make sure it's measurable, and it's not like a one-stop process. We don't just implement something and walk away. Like from our company, we stay with you. We want to know where you are in 6 months, in a year. Is this working? We want to make sure we have a trackable metric. If it's not working, then we need to change it. Because that's not all, like one program fits all companies.
One thing that I've found to be a little bit difficult when you try to set, and it's not all about the numbers, right? It's more about, do people feel comfortable to be able to do their best work at my work? That's what it's all about.
Right. It really isn't about numbers.
Right. But if we're looking at the numbers, which especially as the businesses grow, this is important to at least have as a data point for the conversation. But it is very hard to get my hands on talent availability. So how much of for instance, we hire a lot of software engineers. How much of the software engineer talent pool that's out there is white, black, other ethnic minority? I can't get my hands on any talent availability numbers to be able to compare myself to. Maybe I'm doing really good. Maybe I'm not doing really good. I don't really know. So where do we go to find information like that?
Well, that's readily available online. There's tons of research studies. I mean, I will say the specific job that you mentioned is going to be male-dominated.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And hopefully that's changing. I work at the college, and I meet girls all the time that are, in that area, which is really exciting. But that particular field is going to be hard. But we live in a world now where we work remotely. So it's this is not, if your company is willing to have people that work remotely with software engineers, I would think you would not need to be in the office, right?
No, you don't. Right.
So you can work remotely, so you can reach farther. You can go to there's tons of companies that just cater to diverse talent. And that is one way to try to get diverse talent. And another barrier is that when you try to bring diversity in, but you don't have much, it's really hard to bring people in because it's okay, I love this company, I love what they're saying, but I'm looking around and there's nobody that looks like me. So, it is a matter of, are you willing to, put some money into it, entice people to come to your company, get them to buy in, into your vision.
Thinking about the HR nightmare theme, right? And and you don't have to name names, and I wouldn't expect you to. What stands out to you as that that one situation where you're like, man, I wish I hadn't have done that consultation?
Yes. I mean,
Yes. That's the one we want to hear about.
I had one consultation very early on that I learned a lesson about kind of my reactions to things. So my poker face.
An ideal client.
Yes, and so ideal client, and it was a school, and they were having minorities drop out. It was a private school, drop out at an alarming rate, and they didn't understand what was happening, and they're explaining the problem to me. And first of all, there were some teacher problems. They were doing continuing education with their teachers, so the teachers had been there a long time, are using old language. Continuing education, especially for teachers, is like so important. I'm sure that you can speak to this
Sure.
too. Like, it's very important that we are speaking to children the correct way, because it is such an impact. They'll carry this through their whole life. So during this consultation, that was very clear, first of all. And then one of the closing comments they said was, well, to make our minority students feel more comfortable, this is an elementary school, we are putting them all in one classroom. That was like, you buried the lead. You buried the lead. That's the problem. Like, you can't put all the minority students in one classroom to make them feel comfortable. I was like, that's the so my poker face was horrible that day. And so I did learn from that I needed to, okay, like,
Yeah, but you basically gave them some free advice because you were like,
100%.
Oh, I
and
did.
they-
I mean,
They were like, oh, we shouldn't do that.
I immediately told them, like,
Yeah.
disband that classroom. Like, you're essentially promoting segregation at this point. So you need to. It was a very weird conversation, but that was a client I did not work with.
Yeah.
But you were put in the right place at the right time, and whether the body language gave them the answer they didn't want, at least
yeah.
it helped them realize, like, you can't do that.
I hope so. I hope so. I didn't hear back from them. So I don't know. But
No problem.
But I hope so, yeah. So I realized, but it was a moment of really like, gosh, there's so much going on out there, and there's so much education that people need to have that I think is inherent in us, like, of course you wouldn't do that, right? Like, but they did.
Yeah. Someone had a conversation, and after that conversation, they said, this is the right thing to do.
This is the right idea. A number of people agreed that was the right idea.
Right.
So, and I was on another podcast, and I had a call in, and they had the same thing. They were like, they were sending their child to this school, and they wanted to know if that's a normal practice to do this. This is an out-of-state school that called in, and I was like, I don't know if it's normal, but it's not right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If it's normal in your area, I don't know, but
I don't think so.
yeah, you shouldn't be doing it.
No.
I think that gets back to having the right people at the table to have the right conversation, because when you know better, you do better. And so if you've got everybody on the same page,
Exactly.
only knowing such a limited amount of information, set yourself up.
Yes. And I think sometimes when you have not enough, like a team, like maybe a board or other people that you're consulting, and you're just the head person and you're making decisions by yourself and you're not bouncing it off other people, because I can come up with ideas that are completely, just whatever. I'm boiling the ocean, that phrase, I'm going to fix everything. And then someone's like, Caroline, no, you need to focus. You need like somebody to kind of like keep you in line from your thoughts that get out of hand sometimes. And I think maybe that was a situation where they didn't have that kind of support.
What would you say is a great story, like kind of taking the opposite approach? Like, what's your most favorite success story in walking into a client and sort of turning things around?
Well, I think I have a number. I mean, my greatest successes are when I walk in and I'm dealing with someone that doesn't really, they're just doing it because they know they have to for like public perception. And we go through the process and they leave believing in it, believing in the benefit of it. I'm able to show them the benefit of this, and they've bought into it, and they're willing to commit the funds, make it a line item, because a lot of times what happens is it comes out as like the slush fund, which is always a very bad sign. Like, you need to have a line item in your budget year over year to be able to keep these programs going and be willing to like pay somebody to program manage it. So those are like my greatest success stories are, when I get those, usually it's an older executive, and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. Whether it's they get it that it impacts their bottom line and they're going to make more money, or they just get it because it's the right thing to do. It, you know, doesn't really, I mean, either one, you know, I have a goal.
Yeah.
And they have a goal. And so those are, you know, those are the greatest success stories I have. And I usually can get most people to buy in. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it still is, you know, they're just doing it because they have to. Or maybe they got, you know, did say the wrong thing, like you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
we do live in a cancel culture,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, hurry up, Caroline, get in here. You know, we accidentally, you know, stuck our foot in our mouth, you know. And we have those too.
You mentioned at the beginning of this thing that you spent some time working in healthcare disparities, right? And so healthcare right now is like just totally like demolished from like a talent shortage perspective. And it doesn't matter what town you go to, like there's not enough nurses, there's not enough nursing assistants, there's not enough environmental people, there's not enough doctors, there's not enough of anyone. And so with a shortage of staff, how does that impact like healthcare inequities? This is something that's like should be super important to every listener out there because we all have our local hospitals and our local healthcare practices and stuff. I mean, so like how is the talent shortage either worsening healthcare inequities or like is there anything that we can do as a society to help with that?
I mean, I think that is has so many layers. You know, it goes kind of like education. We need to be able to give our youth like better equity into education so that everybody has, you know, better opportunities, go to school, become a nurse. So we have more nurses. So we need at that level. And then also paying people more is also, we're seeing that coming out of COVID, you know, people are making the choice. I don't want to work because I'm not really getting paid that much, you know, so what's the difference? You know, I can stay home and, you know, maybe collect unemployment or, you know, or I could go to work and pay childcare and all these other things, and the cost is so high just to live right now.
Right.
You know, so I think that a lot of the shortages, we need to treat people better, especially in healthcare. Healthcare is grueling. There's burnout. It's a tough area to work in. Didn't work in clinical. I was a business strategist, and I experienced burnout on my end of it. So I cannot even imagine being a nurse like on the floor every day. Really, I think that it's like they need to be paid more, supported more, and we would find probably more of these healthcare workers. I just really think that they're burnt out and they're tired. And what is attractive about that? Like, why would you want to go into that field when you're going to the hospital and you're just seeing like this, you know, this frustrated nurse or doctor, you know, rushing from room to room, not really connecting or making relationships with other people.
Yeah, it's pure craziness. I mean, I remember talking to a chief nursing officer doing a demo of Work Talk. It's like an app that I created a couple of years ago where it's just really meant to like automate check-ins between an employee and a supervisor, especially for healthcare, because when I was talking to this chief nursing officer, every nurse manager had like 80-ish direct reports. Can you imagine
That's
having
a lot.
80 direct reports?
I've had close, but not that many. That's
I mean,
a lot.
that's just silliness. It's pure silliness. And there's
Right.
no possible way that even if you made it your full-time job to just round on people.
Yeah.
Right. Check in with
And
people,
like,
right?
what's going on? Your
Yeah.
husband has cancer.
Yeah.
Your kid had the flu and you couldn't come to work. Like, your mom's sick, blah, blah. Like, you can't possibly talk to 80 people in a week. And so it's just craziness. So even developing that rapport is, you know, it's just not providing.
Yeah, I
a
mean, that
great-
rapport is so crucial in any situation. You talk about healthcare burnout or diversity, whatever, like that connection with your manager, your boss, your leadership, that's like you buy into your company from that relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how
They
you...
are the
yes.
company.
They
too.
are your company.
They are,
Yeah.
right?
Took it
And-
right out of my mouth.
Yep.
You can tell we talked about that before.
Yeah.
And that's how you get like employee loyalty. You know, it's like, I like who I work for. I'm proud to work for them. They're investing in me. You know, but if they just run you into the ground, it's like, as soon as something that looks better comes along, you're going to go.
Burnout leads to resentment. Resentment leads to resignation.
Nobody wants to hear I quit.
Nope.
All right. Well, how long have we been at this? Is it time for some write-ins? You ready to play HR expert? The good news is,
I think so.
Yeah. Well, we always preface things with we're not employment attorneys, so we're just giving you free advice. Okay.
Definitely not.
So the fun part is we always go through a couple of audience writing questions. We got a few from a couple different states, which sometimes impacts the way that we answer the questions. Sometimes we're left without all the information that we need to properly give our free advice, so we do our best. And so I want to start with one that is kind of like a little bit sad, but to be honest, this is probably happening in all different companies of all different sizes, and it has to do with someone on the staff who develops dementia. And so I'm going to read the write-in here, and then let's chat about what we would do if we were your head of HR. So this person wrote in from Nebraska. I'm an employee dealing with a coworker who most definitely has dementia. Okay, so most definitely, that always, I'm like, do we know?
Is it a
Did you
documented
see it?
diagnosis?
I know exactly what to say.
Yeah.
Were they diagnosed?
Did we see a clinical diagnosis? Like, are you you're saying you're the employee? Like, does this person share it with you? Okay, so moving on. Her work constantly needs corrected. She's a giant liability to the company. This has been discussed with upper management many, many times, and they have asked me to keep documentation of each incident. I guess like when this person forgets something or whatever. They seem to understand and agree, but this has been going on for several years now. Okay, that's crazy. How would you handle this? I understand that approaching an employee and indicating that they could have dementia would be a sticky situation. Yes, please don't do that. But something has to give. Note they're still a few years from retirement. Okay, so what we know here is that the person isn't doing their job to standard. We know that we think this is a peer, right? Observations, and that
Right.
they're just getting super frustrated over the course of several years that nothing's sort of being done, or it seems like this person isn't getting addressed. But they're having to probably pick up the slack and do the work that maybe this person is forgetting or not doing properly. And so if we were the head of HR, what's the first thing we would do?
Oh, I don't ever want to speculate on a diagnosis, right? So like,
Right.
I know. I feel like
it-
that's like stay far, far away from that.
But I think if there is suspect, we should probably operate as if there is to cover ourselves to a certain degree, and also to be fair to the employee. Just thinking about like what are they capable of doing? Because I immediately think when I hear that, is this somebody that was a high performer for us before?
Right, like,
and then all of a
How
sudden,
did the behaviors deviate
Right.
from what used to be normal?
because my concern is that there hasn't been any communication to the person to give them the heads up. Because like my wife will tell me quickly if I'm not doing something right. Thank goodness for her, she's a saint. But like if I don't know, I'm going to keep operating the same way.
Yeah.
So does this
Yeah.
person actually know that they're operating incorrectly?
That is a great point. And then also, like, what if it's not dementia? What
Right.
if just giving this person kind of a heads up on, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but here's the facts. You forgot to get the report in by Friday afternoon, which we've been doing for 10 years. You didn't take the trash out. You didn't do your rounds. You didn't pack the
Right.
product up, in time to get it to the FedEx guy. And they may say, like, you know what? I probably do need to go see somebody about it. I did not realize that at all. I've not gotten that feedback, to your point. But then what if it's not dementia? So it doesn't matter whether or not, like, I've had an instance where somebody's like limping down the hallway, okay, in a manufacturing plant, and we're dealing with like 2,300 degrees Celsius furnaces. So I don't need someone falling into a furnace, okay, if they're limping. Now, not to say that they couldn't do a job. Maybe it's not that job, but maybe I could go put them in a desk job for a little while whatever's going on with their ankle heals. But what you can do as an employer is ask a person to go to a company doctor. And so even if you don't have somebody on staff, right, you can get a relationship with an occupational physician or PA. There's one in your town, wherever you're listening from. You can get a relationship with them for no cost and pay for this person to go to a doctor's appointment and get someone who knows what they're talking about and is able to diagnose this person to make an assessment. Send their job description, send some like physical, requirements of the job. If they sit at a desk all day, if they're out on the plant floor, standing on their feet for 12 hours, like whatever the physical push, pull, lift, twist requirements are, you got to tell that occupational provider the requirements, and they'll be able to make the assessment. And they may say, this person can't work for you. Their cognitive abilities are like low or not what you need as far as, and they may have questions for you as the employer, like follow-up questions, and there should be discussion. there should be discussion between the employee, the HR person or the owner of the business, the occupational provider. But like, it's worth it, especially if the person's worked there for years. I mean, cut them a break. Like, try to help them out. Get them the help.
You can be right or you can be kind.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it would be nice to be both.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is so true. I mean, that human element, I think we need to really bring that back in. Like, people are individuals, they're people, they're not disposable, you know? And I think that some companies get in that mindset of like disposing of people. And I think really investing, I mean, who knows what's going on in that person's life? You know, I have 2 little kids, right? So after I had the 2 kids, my brain was not as clear as it was before.
Right.
You know, and so I would have really hated to lose my job because, you know, I just have 2 babies at home. You know, doesn't seem really fair to me. So it's
Yeah, you're tired. I'm just sleeping.
Right.
I'm forgetting things. I'm sorry.
Yes. So I think that having a conversation and really just sticking to the facts too, you know, like, we don't know if they had dementia, but what are the facts? You missed a deadline. So have to start the conversation from there. Like, I've noticed you missed this deadline. Is there anything going on, you know?
That is
How
the
can I
perfect
help?
thing
Yeah.
to say as
You
a
know?
colleague.
For sure.
Even if you're not in like a leadership position of this person, you can pull them aside in the
Oh, yeah.
cafeteria or at the coffee machine and be like, "Hey, I've noticed a couple things lately. Can I share? I think you'd want to know. Is there something going on? Like, is there anything I can do to help
Yes.
you?"
Yes.
But I'm with you.
Yes,
Yeah.
in that moment too. I think this cataloging something for
Yeah.
years is really not very helpful. I mean, in the moment, address. Yes, this PowerPoint was not on this topic it was supposed to be on, and
Right.
then have that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, but 2 years ago you missed some deadline I don't think that's very helpful.
I will say kudos to the person asking the question because, to your point, you've been having this laundry list to think, well, what are they going to do with it? So, like, I
Right.
would encourage that person to like ask that tough question, like, hey, I'm happy to do this, but like, what's the intent? And
Yeah.
what's the impact that we're trying to get from
right,
this?
right. Very true.
I
very
used to do training workshops with a guy named Mike Smith, and I always loved. He used to ask like the crowd, like, "Does anybody know what stuffing is?" And people are like, "Yeah, it's like at Thanksgiving, it goes in the turkey." And he's like, "No, stuffing is cataloging incidents and never addressing it in a timely manner with somebody, and then you just blow up after weeks or months or years or
Yes.
whatever." And so it sounds like this person is stuffing quite a bit. And I like your idea of giving the colleague timely feedback. And I always like the model of like situation, behavior, impact, and
Yeah.
framing it up like, hey, here was the situation. We were in this meeting. I noticed that, you know, you totally zoned out, or we asked you questions 3 different times and you were like, it was like you didn't even hear the first 30 minutes of the meeting. Like, and we're just all wondering, like, are you okay? And what's going on? So situation, behavior, impact is always a nice way to kind of frame it up and
I like
especially
that.
do it in a timely manner. All right. You want to do another one? Great job, guys.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, let's hit this one. So this is somebody writing in from North Carolina. I was 3 months away from being promoted in my tax role at a large firm and changed departments to finance. So that's always interesting to me when like promotions only happen in like white collar jobs, like based on tenure. I always think that's kind of interesting. Like, is it okay? When I changed, there was no communication between departments about my performance reviews, so I never got promoted. Okay. I have a counselor, another colleague that is not HR in my firm, but he has no idea how to promote me or who to talk to about promotions. I cannot find out who HR is, and no one seems to know who is making these decisions or how to get in touch with HR. Wow.
Run.
They need Leath HR Group badly. We have to use tickets for everything. Ooh, that's interesting. And that is getting introduced in larger companies, like tickets for the HR team. How can HR help large companies or firms advise their employees how to advance in their roles or change departments? This one is multifaceted.
Oh,
and
man.
I love it.
Oh,
There's a lot of layers here.
There's a lot of layers on
I'm
that
just-
one.
Ticketing, just the ticketing system.
Yeah, just like ticketing for people issues. Do you like that?
No.
I don't like it.
Not in the moment. From what I understand of it, no. Having been in the customer service background at one point, and days were thrived on tickets. I can just imagine being locked in and losing
And like,
that.
oh my God, how badly it would drive us nuts, like
Yeah.
trying to resolve people problems
Yeah.
in like a certain time frame, or
Yeah.
like when
Lisa
they get.
telling me, "Hey, Graham, your ticket response time is down.
Your
I need
ticket-
you to get." I'm sorry.
I mean, HR is human resources, humans. Like, I mean, these are, you're figuring out like relationships and conflict resolution, which I don't really think can be done through a ticket. And it can be, right? But I don't think it feels good.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like you care about me. You're not really investing. I'm just a number in a queue.
If it's like I can't log into Paylocity or ADP, and that's
Right.
like, okay, I kind of
That's-
understand that.
yes. Yeah.
But we always joke about, so we call our HR department people and culture, and we always tell people we got to make these T-shirts. It's not policies and complaints. P&C. People and culture, not policies and complaints. I feel like we would get so many complaints if we had a ticketing system. Like people would just be like midnight after
Yeah.
a beer, just like
Yeah.
plugging in the complaint.
And another thing.
Yeah, and another thing that you need to work on tomorrow, PNC team. So
PTSD kicking in of those angry parent emails that I'd wake up to the next day as
Totally.
the principal. Like,
I can't
okay,
imagine.
Another one.
oh man, but getting promoted, I mean, it's a super personal thing, and especially if you feel like you're close to getting a promotion and you take a risk on kind of moving to a different department and professionally growing, but you still want people to acknowledge like all the experience that you're bringing into that role, and you don't just erase your entire background when you move into a different department. So
I think I'm a little confused on the switching of departments and then still getting the promotion. I'm not sure how that works. Like I would just stay in my role and get my promotion in that role.
yeah,
Like, is
and
the
like I
promotion
worked
transferable?
Yeah, I mean, I worked at a Fortune 500 company, and Corning was relatively progressive when it came to talent planning and stuff. So it was always very. We had PeopleSoft, which was once I changed. Like I got a different manager, they could see all my past performance reviews and like all my pay increases, and so like to not have
Most of the systems are
visibility
like
to
that.
that is odd. So I would like look into, are you truly assigned to your new manager in the system?
Right.
But then also, like, can you log in and see them? I would think from a self-service portal perspective, you should be able to like find them yourself and print them out and download them, and you can talk about it in your one-on-one with your boss. But like, didn't you get a pay increase when you moved to the new job?
Or did you?
We got a lot of questions.
I got a lot of questions.
Yeah. I just think like the question is ultimately like it sounds like there is an HR department of some sort, and there's probably some standard operating procedure, but it's not knowing. So from like an HR perspective, how do we make that really transparent
Right.
for the team so they can see it, understanding, moves happen, change happens fast. But I would hope that her mentor or counselor has received some sort of promotion or a salary adjustment at some point in their career. But it sounds like it's still super vague. And so I think in wanting to personally be a really good HR business partner is getting those cadences in place of having those quarterly conversations and weekly check-ins and setting the cadence and saying, hey, you know what? We're going to analyze the market rate for salary ranges twice a year, and then we can have these conversations. I think HR getting out in front and doing that people element, it sounds like the people element is missing.
It's missing. And
Yeah.
And you can have all the policies in the world, but if your employees don't know about the policies or, I mean, what good are they?
100%.
Well, the other thing too is HR doesn't do promotions.
Right.
Like
Right.
we ask great questions, and like Graham said,
right.
we try to be great
That's what I
HR
mean, yeah.
business partners and make sure that we're not promoting the wrong people or excluding people who deserve it that maybe don't look like the manager that wants to do the promotion. So like I think we can ask the right questions and facilitate good discussion around promotions, but at the end of the day, HR is not going to give you the promotion. The people in management positions in your function are going to promote you. So you need to be having, more importantly than finding out who your HR person is, which that is kind of disturbing that you don't even know how to find them. But more importantly is having great discussions with your boss and your boss's boss about what you want to do with your career, how do you get there, and asking for their help. Everyone wants to be part of a success story. And so if you can ask them, hey, I'm in this director of finance position now. Someday I want to be in your seat. Doesn't mean I want to take your job. I'll move to Germany. I'll go to New York. I'll do anything. But I want to be a VP of finance someday. Can you help me get there? What do I need to do? Can you talk me through your journey? What do I need to go back to school? Do I need to work on a project or take a leadership position on an employee resource group?
Right.
There's all different things you can talk about, but it's with your boss and their boss, not HR.
Yes.
Nailed it.
Mic drop.
All right. Well, hey, any other closing comments?
This has been fun.
What's your favorite dance? His is the Dougie.
I like the Dougie too.
Okay.
I mean that's
So,
a, that's a, that's
so
a good one.
backstory, I was teaching 8th grade math, and we were doing, it was Thanksgiving, and there was a fundraiser, and whoever's class got the most money, the teacher had to wear the costume of a turkey, and it was when the Dougie came out. And so I told the kids that I would do it if we raised the most money, and so there's probably some video out there. It was like before social
There's
media
plenty
really.
of
there's out there-
videos,
Now,
Graham.
now it's reimbursed at Vantaca at one of our.
We do it at all
parties.
the parties.
It's like a rite of passage. There was even a
Oh, I
tacky
love
sweater
it.
made of it with me dancing
Oh
on the
my
sweater.
God.
So it's a thing, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Lisa always likes to find a way to bring it up.
Hey, it's been fun. Thank you,
Yes,
Caroline.
thank you for having
Thank you,
me.
Graham, for being our guest host. I'm Lisa Leath. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe out on YouTube. Make sure that you're tuning in and getting automatic alerts when the new podcasts air. Make sure that you're following Leath HR Group because all the HR Nightmares micro clips show up there. You'll get all the juicy tips in 1 minute or less. And then also make sure that you're checking us out on TikTok, HR Nightmares. We're getting lots of views. There's like a few clips out there with like 350,000 views. So let's try to get
right.
TikTok famous. That's what Gabby wants to do. So thank you so much. Another episode of HR Nightmares. We're trying to help you avoid them. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.